Chapter 2. Is that all you have to say for yourself? The KGB officer growled. Nikolai hesitated for a moment. Sir, that is my final decision. The officer shook his head. You're serious, aren't you? He took the cigarette from his mouth and tapped a long string of ashes onto the floor. I am, sir. You are a stubborn man. The officer shook his head again and sighed in frustration. We've used all the usual methods and forms of diplomacy we know. He put the cigarette back into his mouth and took another long drag from it. I wish you were on our side, preacher man. It would make my job so much easier. Preacher man. Nikolai dared to smile at the nickname the officer had given him. In diplomacy, their process of interrogation was anything but diplomatic. Victims of the KGB had choices, all right, but they were very one-sided. Either allow yourself to be persuaded and comply, or else pay the piper. The officer finished his cigarette and poured a shot glass of vodka. Surprisingly, he extended the glass in Nikolai's direction, but Nikolai declined with a simple, "Thank you, sir, but I don't drink." The officer grunted and set the glass down roughly, spilling half of the vodka on the file folder in front of him. His mood quickly turned from warm to sour. Well, I can see that I'm getting nowhere fast, preacher man. I've got more important things to do than waste my time here with you. He raised his voice. I might as well be talking to the wall for all the good this conversation is doing. We've kept you awake, hammering you insistently, but you won't break. We've offered you bribes and positions in our organization. We've even been willing to concede some of the restrictions we put on you during past encounters, but you always give us the same answer. It's obvious you're going to be of no help here. The officer raised a hand to shake his finger at Nikolai. I'm tired of this nonsense. We were hoping to talk to you and make some sense out of this whole situation, but I see that you are more stubborn than ever. He pulled a handkerchief from his uniform pocket and sopped up the spilled vodka before closing the manila folder. Your case is out of my hands. My superiors expect results, and if I can't get them, then there's going to be a price to pay. His voice grew calm again. I like you, Nikolai, but if we can't come to an agreement, there is nothing I can do to save you. It was the first time he had used Nikolai's name since Nikolai had first come to the prison 5 days before. I've been instructed to inform you that you are being sentenced to labor in a prison camp in Siberia. Unless you're ready to answer our questions, there is nothing more I can do. To Nikolai's surprise, the officer stood to his feet and extended his hand. Good luck, preacher man. May your God be with you. He gestured toward the door, nodded to the guard, and then sat down again to finish his paperwork. As Nikolai turned to go, he thought he saw a look of pity in the KGB officer's eyes, but he knew he must be mistaken. KGB officers were known for their hard hearts and their unflinching determination to get information out of their victims. Nikolai was led back to his cell. As the door clanged shut behind him, he took stock of his situation. Things were not looking good. There was no doubt that he had made the right decision, but at what cost? He had no idea how long he would be sentenced to the frigid wastelands of Siberia. Years? Decades? Until he died? He cringed at the thought of the dreaded sentence, so frightening to any prisoner's ears. Banishment to the Siberian frontier. Summer temperatures in Siberia could be cool and damp, with swarms of black flies and huge, bloodthirsty mosquitoes everywhere. And with no towns or settlements in that vast wasteland, he had heard that escape was impossible. There was little chance of survival should a prisoner even attempt to make an escape. But it was the winters in Siberia that were the most fearsome for a prisoner. Temperatures dropped sometimes below 50 degrees to sometimes even zero, and with the biting wind that chased its way across the Northland, living conditions were unthinkable. Nikolai shivered in his cell just thinking about the prospects of such a future. There was still time for him to rethink the whole thing, time to change his mind and escape the fate he had been handed. But, of course, Nikolai knew that he would never do that. He could not. It was against everything he had ever believed in and stood for all of his life. Allegiance to the higher power in his life was the most important thing now. The Russian KGB could take away his pulpit, they could take away his freedom, and even his health, but they would never take away his choice to serve God and be true to Him. And now, at the recommendation of the secret police, the communist government was going to exile him to an outpost prison in Siberia. It was a heavy price to pay, but Nikolai had no doubt in his mind that God was going to be with him. He would not give up his resolve to guard his church members' names. He would continue to speak for God no matter where he lived. He would witness for God no matter what it cost him. And who knew? Maybe the Holy Spirit would use him to do even greater things for God than he was already doing. Time would tell.